Umbraco gang, it's me, Warren. Today we're going to pick up where we left off in terms of porting this package from V8 to V9. But next we're going to take a look at configuration and how we can add some configuration into our very simple package. So let's jump on in, put some tunes on and get hacking. Okay, so we got some music on and let's jump into where we picked up. Okay, so we had a very simple package, if you can remember, and if you haven't watched that video, I will do the YouTube-y thing and say point to one of these random corners. I never know which one it is, but and you can watch that video there. I recommend you take a look at that first before coming back to this video to learn about configuration. Anyway, so now that you may have gone and watched that, let's look at what our package does. So it's a background task runner or recurring hosted service in NETCore land. But I have two properties that are set on the base class, and it would make sense if I could configure these. So first things first, I am going to create just a new class, nothing that fancy, and we'll call this take out the trash, because that's the name of my package, and then we'll call it settings. And this is just a plain old class object, aka POCO, and it's going to have two properties, prop, and this one's going to be a time span, and we're going to call this how often we repeat, and we're going to give it a default value, so if nothing's set. We want this to be, what did we set it in? Not startup, but in our clean room. I have to remind myself which way around these are. So the period is how often we repeat. So I want that to be every minute. So 0 hours, 1 minute, and 0 seconds. And we'll create a new property that is a time span and we'll tab across, and we'll call this delay before we start. Oh, wow, there. I'll type it again. Weird. Delay before we start. So, I don't know what's happening with my tabbing. Okay, and again, this was set to, I think this one was set to 45 seconds. Let's just check for clarity. Yep. So now I have this very simple graph. And the next thing is to register it. So get NETCore is the IOptions pattern is I think is what NETCore refers to it as. But let's just do a quick Google just to .NET core, is it IOptions? Pretty sure that, yeah, there we go, the options patterns in ASP.NETCore. This is great documentation from Microsoft. However, we've also got some fantastic documentation from our wonderful community. Emma, who's on the Unicore or the .NET Core team, has also written a fantastic article about options and configuration that I'd totally recommend you reading as well. That was on our community calendar, 24 days. So yeah, go and take a look at that. I'll put a link somewhere. I don't know, but yeah, I'll link that as well. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. So yes, options pattern. That's what we was getting at. So, done that. Next thing is to add, let's add a new extension method. And we'll call this one the same again, but it's just going to have different parameters. And take out the trash package. This service collection is services, and I'm just trying to remember from some of my notes. Yes, this is going to take an action. And this is take out the trash settings. This is going to be the configuration that we can configure in code. So we can go if configure is not null. So some newer C# language features here. Then we can go services.configure. So this is what we're need to do. So we're going to give it the POCO. So take out the trash settings, and then we're going to pass in the action. And then there's some overloads for this as well. So it can take in an I configuration, which we'll get to later. This action, so the configure options, which is what we're going to pass in. And there's some different things if you want to figure out how you want to bind back to the POCO and things like that. But for now, we're just going to pass configure, and then we will do. So if you call this method, we are going to call this kind of base class method that is just going to add the hosted service. So we're going to do services.take out the trash package, but we'll return that. So needs to be returned, all the services, the actual collection that we're extending, or the extension method obviously needs to be returned. So if we pass something in as a second parameter and it's not null, and we can start configuring the options. Once that's done, then we can take a look. So that's relatively simple change. We have some configuration, but configuration by code. So with the package zip approach, I'm going to have to turn this music down. It's a bit too loud for me to concentrate today. There we go. That's a bit better. Yes, so I've lost my train of thought, totally. I'll have to add a blooper. Boop. What was I trying to get at? Yes, so package zips, obviously we have our composer, and if you watched last episode, you'll know the difference, how it's going to work for just a vanilla NuGet package approach, and an Umbraco zip package that has to kind of still do some voodoo magic. So we are going to say that we have installed our package, and we're gonna use the code approach. So we are going to so this is our example website, test website, and in the startup class, this is kind of what you get default out of the box of an Umbraco V9 site. So you're going to do services, and then we're going to do add take out the trash package, and then we'll enter, and then get our usings. And then I have to remember the syntax, and then we'll call this, I don't know, we'll call it config. That might be a bit confusing because of the variable name up here. We'll call it, we'll just call it C. C equals, and then C dot, there we go. So now we're getting strongly typed configuration that we can configure. So rather, if we don't set these, obviously I'm going to get a default of 45 seconds before we start, and then we're going to repeat every minute. So let's set this to some very unusual numbers just to know that it's working. So it's going to be, I don't know, 53 seconds. And the configuration for how often we repeat is going to be, we're going to set it to, we're going to repeat every, I don't know, 49 seconds. So yeah, that's how we would do some configuration. That's configuration with code. So that's the IOptions pattern. But let's just prove that this works. So let's add a breakpoint here, or maybe not here, but inside. And then in our clean room, in our constructor, we'll then get to, yes, this is not going to work, is it? Because I haven't updated how we pass or call in this values. So, yes, that's how we do it. So I need to inject, I'm going to inject something new. So this is IOptions, this is from Microsoft, and I'm going to give it a type. Let's all enter and make it happy. And we're going to go take out the trash settings, and then we're going to call this, I don't know, trash settings or something like that. Okay, that's how it wants to format it. So the first one was, we'll give it trash settings dot value, and then this is not how often we repeat. This is delay before we start. I think I now always get very confused. No, the second one is the delay. So how often we repeat, and this one is going to be trash settings value delay before we start. If we wanted these IOptions in, say, our method and get these configuration values, we could do the following. So we could have a private, and we could do trash settings equals trash settings dot value, and then we could then just do trash settings dot delay before we start. So yeah, this value is needs to be resolved. But yeah, if you're using it in the method, I would use obviously in the constructor, and then assign the POCO back. But yeah, so now, as I don't really need this extra private variable, we can get rid of that. That all looks good. I suppose now we can do a build, and we can run the site and see if our configuration flows down to our clean room class. Booting up. There we go. So you can see it's doing. Well, again, that's caught me out. I'm so used to pressing F10 on the keyboard to step through that it's now stopped the recording yet again. I need to change that next time. But for now, let's jump back in. This was adding our new values rather than the defaults. So we should be able to inspect, yes, 49 and 53. Perfect. So we now know our configuration by code works. However, what if we want configuration using the wider .NETCore configuration in terms of AppSettings.json, environment variables, Azure Key Vault storage, whatever. The configuration in .NETCore is highly pluggable. So I'm going to show you how we could get that working next. So let's take a look at that. Let's stop. And now we're going to make another extension method. So public static iService collection and take out the trash package. Take out the trash package, and this iService collection services, and this one is going to take in an iConfiguration, and not from AngleSharp. This is going to be from Microsoft's DI or configuration stuff, as far as I know, and we'll call it configuration, not configure, just to give it some kind of at least slightly different names. Even though it's a different type, it's still nice to just give it a different name from this one. So what do I want to do here? I could do, just to make it, I suppose, more readable. I suppose I still could do that, but sometimes it's, I don't know. Is that read it? Is that? Yeah, maybe that might be easier to read. So it's very add the configuration and bind it to the POCO from the startup class when you kind of call this extension method and pass in the configuration options from the POCO. Then we're going to add the hosted service, or the very vanilla stuff that we need to get it to work. And then we're going to return the collection. Yeah, maybe that's as I've done it in this approach, like here, rather than doing a one-liner. We'll go with that approach. Anyway, we're going to do pretty much the same. So if configuration is not null, then this time we're going to do services.configure, and we're still going to give it, take out the trash settings. Excuse me. And this time we're going to call configuration and get section. And now I'm going to give it a key. This could be any key. But for me, it makes sense that our package is called take out the trash. So let's do that. So this means, I'll show you, well, I suppose when we get it to a bit more set up and going through. But yeah, we'll do the same again. Services dot add take out the trash without any parameters, and then we're going to turn the services again. Perfect. So if we remove this now, and say I don't want to configure it manually, we're going to get the package zip and the magic from the composer to do it for us. So we could, on the Umbraco builder itself, there is the configuration.config. Yeah, this is the iConfiguration. So we can pass that in, or pass it through and let it flow through. So that is good to go. So this is going to be looking for, so out the box it's going to be looking for configuration values from AppSettings.json. So let's do that. So I've given it a, let's start at the top, and I've given it a key of, what was it, take out the trash. So that's our section. And then it's gonna, I've got two properties in the POCO. So what have I got? How often we repeat. So that's that key. And then a time span needs to be serialized as follows, as far as I remember. So 0 colon or semicolon, and then we'll give it 2 minutes and 24. That's how often we're going to repeat. And the other property is delay before we start. So we could set that to, I don't know, 0, 0, 49. Can't remember what we set it. In config or in code configuration. Okay, we've removed it. So these values should now flow through, and that means AppSettings.Development would override AppSettings.json. I have to remember what way around it is. So we could, I suppose we could test the theory. Let's prove it works first. Actually, let's prove it works, and then we can figure out what way round the inheritance flow works. So let's do a build. So our composer is going to call our new extension method on the service collection that is passing through the iConfiguration, and then from the iConfiguration we're basically saying do pretty much the same thing, but from the configuration bind anything that you have in config with the section take out the trash, and then kind of map the properties back and forth for the keys to this POCO. So I suppose it's time to run it. Test as it works. Must remember even, not press F10. Don't press F10. So very tempting. Let's use the button. Well, let's check first. So 2 minutes 24, that looks good, and 49 seconds. So that has worked from configuration. Perfect. So we could probably stop and we was going to see what way around the configuration flows is the specific environment that you're running. So when we run this website, I have in properties there's launch settings, and when it's running the IIS Express profile, or if I change to Kestrel and run it from that way, each of them is setting an environment variable called ASP NETCore _ environment, and this development could be any string, but it's just a convention that obviously .NETCore and their templates come with. Is development. So we then have AppSettings and then the environment name. So let's set this to like, I don't know, 4 hours and 24. And we'll set this one to be 10 minutes and 12 seconds. So if I'm correct, I think AppSettings.Development takes priority over app settings because it's more specific. But let's double check theory. So it should be booting up. 4 hours, 10 minutes 12. So yeah, that's correct. So AppSettings.Development is more specific in terms of configuration keys. So it takes these values. So useful for when you need to, you're working in development, you need maybe these values need to be lower when you're doing development and you want to test something out, but when you're in production, and the AppSettings.json for live sites, obviously you might want these to be higher values. Makes total sense. So that's how we do configuration from a typical file. So this would be in terms of our replacement of web.config and any kind of XML config files or JSON config files that you may have had previously. This is kind of the pattern and the approach to take. I hope this has made sense so far. If not, I highly recommend, like I said before, reading Microsoft's documentation or reading Emma's fantastic article on this as well. So I think we're good to go. I think I'm going to pause here because there's one extra tip that I want to kind of dig out that I found super helpful. So I'm going to go and hunt for that and come back. Right, okay, I'm back. And I stumbled across this article early in the week, and this is a fantastic tip. I suppose really it comes from Cecil. So kudos Cecil. This is a fantastic tip in terms of getting a dump of .NET configuration values and kind of seeing where they're coming from. So let me show you how this works. It's pretty much how he shows in his tweet, but it's a nice handy tip to know just whilst you're debugging and need to know configuration values. So in the startup, in the configure, I'm gonna copy and paste his snippet. So app.use endpoints. So we're just gonna create a very very simple in terms of whenever you hit this very specific URL /debug-config, run this piece of code that is in this kind of this request. As it is, it's not underscore. It's not just env, it's underscore env in our case. And it's not configuration, it's underscore config. It's probably just easier to have written this rather than copy and paste this. Never mind. So this piece of code means that anytime when we are only in a development environment, so when that environment variable for ASP NETCore underscore environment is set to development, then only this endpoint can be reached. Only because obviously with the configuration, you could be storing your connection string, you could be storing more sensitive keys and things to APIs that obviously you wouldn't want to publicly be accessible on your website. So hence it needs to be, makes sense, it's we're doing this only in development. So we can save that, build, and let's run. So Umbraco should still, we're still reading our values, everything's still booting just fine. And then if we go to debug-config, I have to remember, is that what the root was? And it was. We now, if I zoom in, because it's pretty gnarly to read, let's zoom out a tiny bit. So we get all the values from configuration and their value and where they've come from. You can see there's kind of like general environment variables in here. So ASP NETCore underscore environment set to development, and it's saying it's come from the environment variables config provider. Further down, obviously you can see our connection string, hence probably not ideal that we do this on a live environment. And you can just see I'm using a SQL C database connection here. And it's come from the JSON config, but it's come specifically from AppSettings.json. And then if we scroll further down, what was my key? Take out the trash, so t. So we can see I'll take out the trash. And then we've got our two properties, delay before we start and how often we repeat. So we can see that, they're both coming from AppSettings.Development.json. And then we can see our Umbraco CMS keys. And these only show that specifically have been, have been set. So it doesn't, I know that for a fact that the Umbraco CMS configurations have a ton more keys that are being listed here. So it's only showing the ones that have been specifically set by configuration, either JSON config, environment variables, or Azure Key Vault, or whatever configuration provider that you're going to be using. So hopefully this was a handy, useful tip. And again, like I said, kudos to Cecil for the tweet, and then I suppose also kudos for Andrew Locke for me discovering this blog post. So nice work, kudos to them. I think let's just check everything is still working. I think we could test that the configuration flows correctly one more time. And this time we could, with our development, so we're only going to set how often we repeat. in the development one, and we're going to set the delay before we start in the kind of higher level one, so to speak. So development's more specific, so it goes development will override last, and then app settings would come after it. So let's run through one more time. No, I don't think we're watching the configuration files, so it's not going to take immediate effect. So 4 hours and 49 seconds, so that's definitely seems to be taking it from both. And then let's refresh this kind of debug view, and let's scroll down to our take out the trash. So you can see that, yeah, one from AppSettings.json and then AppSettings.Development.json. So that's it. We've learned how to do IOptions, or the options pattern. So configuration by code using the startup class. So this still gives us the flexibility in terms of if people are simply using our package from NuGet. So we could do services dot take out the trash package and do our config as before. So this, let's stop this. Let's actually find out. I'm curious what would happen. What's the order? I would imagine as this is last, we're going to override in code, because the composer stuff would most likely come in from add Umbraco or add back office. Oh, there we go, add composers. That's most likely where it's going to get called in, and the configuration extension method for loading from config, so AppSettings.json or environment variables. So as this order is going to be after this add composers, this is most likely going to be what wins. So let's test the theory. Delay before we start is a new time span, and 2 hours, 20 minutes and 20 seconds. And how often we repeat is new time span, and it is 4 hours, 40 minutes and 40 seconds. That looks good. Save that. Run this. So my gut feeling is that it should be that this configuration by code is going to win, because this is the last time it's been updated. So let's find out. 4 hours, 40 and 40 seconds, 2 hours, 20 minutes and 20 seconds. Perfect. So does that actually show in our debug config here? Does that actually show that it's coming from? So this is, yeah, this could be confusing then, because yes, the configuration is coming from this, but as we set this, so order is important in terms of .NETCore and NETCore stuff, because I imagine if we move this now and put this before all our kind of registering our composers and things like that, that the last one in is going to be our app settings configuration, or configuration from external sources. So let's do that. Four hours and 24 and 49 seconds. Yep, so that definitely proves the theory then. That was nice to know. I wasn't 100% sure, but it's just good to test the theory. So that's what we've done today. We've learned about configuration and IOptions. Hopefully that's been useful. I'm sure there's plenty more for me to dig into and show what's changed. So keep an eye out for that video, and I'll see you around. Until next time, have fun, happy hacking!